Welcome to the Whole Story podcast. This podcast series is focused on inspiring sustainability in agriculture, using the framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs. Each week, our guests are invited to share their story, highlight a particular one of the 17 goals, and leave us with some practical tips for sustainability on farms. I'm Becks Smith, founder of The Whole Story, a B Corp certified social enterprise inspiring, facilitating, and articulating holistic sustainability in agriculture. And this podcast has been brought to life in partnership with the incredible team at FMG, who are passionate about partnering with organisations like The Whole Story, so together we can support rural New Zealand. So whatever you're doing while listening to this episode, thanks for choosing us. The best way you can support our mahi is to follow and share the show on whatever app you're listening on, and I hope this episode leaves you inspired and excited about the bigger picture of sustainability in agriculture. Today's guest is here to set the scene. Bridget Williams, CEO and founder of social enterprise Bead and Proceed, knows a fair bit about the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, she's based her entire business around them and getting creative with beads. Bridget is going to give us a quick rundown of what the SDGs are, why they're important, and leave us inspired and optimistic about putting these goals into practice on farm. So today on the Whole Story podcast, I would like to introduce you all to Bridget Williams, CEO and founder of Bead and Proceed. Welcome, Bridget.
Hello, Becks. How are you?
I am so good, and I am so excited to talk to you today. Heaps of pearls of wisdom will come out of this.
Same. I've known you for a wee while now, and it's just really exciting that we are here in the space of liftoff.
No, thank you. So let's kick into it. We all love a good story, and I know that you will have a great one to tell. So can you tell us all the story of Bridget Williams?
The story of Bridget Williams, I would summarize Bridget Williams as a new adult fiction with a little bit of urban fantasy. I had always noticed that I had a real love for creativity and a real love for nature. So creativity was something that always came really natural to me. It was a strength of mine, I guess you could say. I was always that kid that was painting, doodling, bumblebees everywhere. You know how kids get obsessed with a particular doodle. That was me. I had the love of nature thanks to my amazing mum and dad. They were really big on making sure that we spent time in the outdoors, family tramping trips all the time. And my granddad on my mum's side, he was basically a professional gardener on a farm out in Taitapu. And then we had the love of and our connection with skiing in the mountains. So I've always had these two really strong bonds to creativity and nature. And as I've gotten older, through creating Bead and Proceed, I've been so fortunate to kind of combine those two together. How I got there it is a long story, but I guess I would start by saying that with creativity, even though I recognize it and I value it now, I didn't always when I was younger. For some reason, being described as, Bridget's the creative one, or she's a bit more creative, it almost started to sound like a backhanded compliment. It's as a society, and I don't know whether your parents were the same, Becks, but creativity wasn't always something that was seen as a ticket to a good job, It was seen as something that is just it's a hobby, right? So I put creativity in a box. I didn't see it serving me as I got older. So when I decided what career path I wanted, I went for a more, sensible option. You can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes, sensible. And I pursued law because I did see there being some connection with, creativity and the idea of needing to, creatively problem solve. And it is quite theatrical, when you're presenting in court. So I saw those connections. But in reality, obviously, there's a lot behind the scenes that is not a lot to do with creativity. I was a lawyer for about 3 years. I worked really hard throughout university. I went to University of Canterbury and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship. And then I got a summer clerk position and then a grad position at a really great law firm. So I was that lawyer I had always, or at least thought I wanted to be. And I quickly realized that, law did not come naturally to me. It was not a strength. And creativity, it came knocking one day. Making a very long story short, I had a bad day in court. I made a beaded necklace to put my frustration into something positive. I realized there's real power in making time with creativity, painting, making, getting messy, all of that. And then discovered the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, realized that there was a awesome connection of creativity and play and workshopping with this really amazing framework. The United Nations found out about Beat and Proceed. They gave me seed funding, got the first order of kits, got a business contacted me asking if I could workshop with their leadership team. And then I had to make that tough decision whether I should work on full-time with Beat and Proceed and leave the law behind. And much to my dad's horror, I decided to do just that. So I've been working on Beat and Proceed now full-time since April of 2019, and it's taken me to some incredible places. And I feel so fortunate to be able to work with businesses and organizations, helping them align to the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Wow, what an amazing story. I knew you'd have a good one to tell. What is really, really standing out for me there is like all those learnings along the way, all those moments where you have reflected on and learned different things, and also, leaning into those values, and that, you boxed creativity away, but it's amazing. It was such a strong core value to you that it just came out anyway, and leaning into that and really respecting that value of yourself is just so powerful.
Thanks, Becks. That's the thing. Like, I do believe that your strengths will eventually come knocking. You can put them in a box, you can pretend like they don't exist. But honestly, when we are living our fullest, most authentic self, it is when we are harnessing the power of our strengths. And ideally, if we can use them as a force for good, then even better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So that is a really nice segue into the next topic I want to discuss, which is one of my core values around sustainability. And, it's a really big word. It's really weighted. And at the moment, it's very trendy. What I really want to dig into is, what does sustainability mean to you, Bridget?
So for me, sustainability it comes down to intergenerational justice. We have to manage our economy in such a way that, leaves enough resource for the future. But I don't think it stops there with, enough resource. I think it's about making sure, we have sufficient resource for the future to not just survive, but to thrive. That is how I see sustainability, that intergenerational justice piece. And what that looks like is combining all areas of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental, because it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? And that's, I think you're right. It's that moving out of just surviving and into thriving. What a change in mindset, and what an amazing place to be in. Yeah, now to bring it back to, I guess, to agriculture, it's a sector that I'm working primarily in. I want to know what, if any, and we got a little bit of light shone on it before, I think, is your link to agriculture.
Well, I would say, look, full disclosure, it's definitely loose. It's definitely a loose connection. I have my granddad, Ron Hamilton, who worked at a farm in Taitapu. I always had access, I guess, to agriculture in that way. But I mean, it wasn't like I was, deep in the thick of, it. Like, I would say my link to agriculture is pretty loose. But now where I am, the link to agriculture, I would say, is more connected to the clients and the businesses and organizations I work with. So as mentioned, we run workshops with organizations, helping them align to the relevant goals that they connect with. And then last year I workshopped and presented at eTipu, which is the Boma Agri Summit for last year in 2021. So yeah, I've been lucky to kind of reconnect with that agriculture side, especially with the work that I do with Beat and Proceed and the strong links that it has to sustainability.
Yeah, I think in New Zealand, no one's ever that far disconnected from agriculture anyway, are they? I mean, I come from an urban background as well, and somehow I found myself fully immersed in the agricultural sector. So yeah, I don't think we're too many steps away, any of us, are we?
No, not at all. I mean, and I guess that's the beauty, and that's what makes New Zealand so special, because we do have that really strong connection to nature, for sure.
And so I'd really like to put you in the hot seat here. Can you tell us a funny story related to farming or agriculture that you might have been involved in?
I'm thinking about this, and I really can't like, one, I can't think of any funny stories. And second, I'm struggling to think of like one that specifically connects back to agriculture. But like something that comes to mind, and again, very loose connection to agriculture. But I do think about, I remember as a kid, and I remember going to my granddad's farm, and I used to love getting the eggs from the chickens. That was like, it was always like, let's go to the hen house and let's collect the eggs. Like, I love that. I remember when I was really, really young, I can't remember how old I was, still like watching shows like Barney or something. And I remember making the connection, eggs, little baby chicks, they come from eggs. And so I remember going to the hen house and being like, I'm not going to eat this egg. I'm going to look after it, and I'm going to keep it warm and wait until a little baby chick comes out. And I remember thinking, like, not realizing that obviously a rooster has to be involved in this process. And there was no rooster in this hen house whatsoever. So this egg was never going to be fertilized. But I do remember taking it home, putting it in my sock drawer, wrapping it up with a whole lot of socks and being like, come on, little baby chick, like, grow for me. It did not, obviously, because that is not how science works. And I just remember having this egg in my sock drawer for like ages. I don't know what ended up happening to the egg, but no chick hatched. Let's just say that.
That is a great story, and not that loosely linked. I think that's a wonderful link to agriculture. And it's really funny, actually, because my children do something really similar. Like, they're always thinking that the eggs will hatch into baby chicks, whether they're fertilized or not. So, that's a totally common thing, whatever your background is, to think that. And yeah, it's really, I think it shows a really nurturing and caring side of you too, Bridget.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, you should keep that one stored away as a great memory of showing that empathetic and that caring side of yourself.
That is very sweet. And also, I would say that very optimistic side of myself as well. Like, in what world would even if a chick could be hatched from that, I like just stuffed it with socks in a dark drawer in my sock drawer. You know what I mean? I'm like, life will grow, even if I, keep it in a sock drawer. Like, there was real optimism to that as well. So you're right. I guess there are some themes that I can draw on for sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So talking about that optimism, and I see a lot of that in Beat and Proceed, what you've created there. So I guess tell us more about Beat and Proceed. Tell us about your mission and the purpose and the beautiful work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Becks. So Beat and Proceed is a social enterprise, and it exists to educate people on the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals and to inspire action towards them through creativity. So there are a few ways that we do this. One of the core ways is by bringing people together to each make and paint a 5-beaded necklace, bracelet, or keyring in the top 5 sustainable development goals that they care about personally. And the idea is, while everyone is painting and creating and in that creative space, they are discussing and ideating and strategizing ways to weave sustainability through their business or their workplace or organization, or even in their daily life, because it goes beyond that. And since Beat and Proceed started, initially, as I sort of talked through at the start with the journey of, where I've come from, it was just a Beat and Proceed kit that you could purchase. And a big part of Beat and Proceed was about making sure that I walked the Sustainable Development Goals talk. So everything with Beat and Proceed is ethically and sustainably sourced. So the kits themselves are made from an incredible organization located in Calcutta, India, called Silence. Silence is World Fair Trade certified, and they employ adults who have hearing, physical, or speaking disabilities, giving them quality and safe employment. And they hand make the kits from recycled paper. And then the beads are made from recycled wooden pallets. And we've partnered with the Natural Paint Company, which is eco-friendly and sustainable paint. And for every square metre of paint painted, they save a square metre of Amazon rainforest. And it's really exciting. We've just ticked over saving Beat and Proceed through our workshops. We've saved 1,000 square metres of Amazon rainforest from the paint used, which is really, really cool. And a big part of Beat and Proceed is also this one-for-one model. So for every kit purchase, another is donated to either a low decile school or a deserving community organisation, because a huge part of the Sustainable Development Goals comes back to the spirit of leaving no one behind. So we want everyone to be a champion of the framework. But that's sort of like the foundation kit. And then it grew from there to offering different workshops. So they're called Beat and Proceed Epic. So it's like the epic experience. Sounds super commercialized, but, at the same time, I guess that's kind of, how I would summarize it. So I come in and I facilitate a 3-hour workshop with an organization or a business wanting to upskill their staff on the goals, have them connect to the framework personally, so they are taken on the journey when the business or organization wants to, really champion sustainability. And then I've also started to grow in this event conference space, because obviously conferences and events, they have a huge audience, and this framework is a really important one. So the more we can raise awareness about this framework and engage people, conferences are a great place to do that. And of course, we have this really cool offering that's very tactile and creative, which is great for conferences wanting to give a unique experience to the attendees. And rather than everyone painting a necklace or a key ring, each attendee paints a bead in their top goal that they care about, because I'm sure we'll talk about the goals soon, but each goal has a different color, and all the beads are then weaved into a stunning beaded mural, which serves as weaving together our collective actions to make a more sustainable future. So, and then on top of that, offer, sustainable development goals consulting, help businesses align to the relevant targets. And it's just sort of gone way beyond the beads. I mean, the beads are just a tool to help extract that authentic discussion and create safe space to, unlock ideas and strategies. But it's gone far beyond just a necklace that I painted one day after a bad day in court.
That is incredible. And do you know what really sticks out is that it's not just you working with businesses and groups of people to have positive impact on the world, but actually Beat and Proceed itself has such an epic positive impact on the world. It's absolutely incredible. So you touched on there as well, that we talk a little bit more about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So could you really set the scene for us with that? What are the Sustainable Development Goals and why are they so important?
The 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, they go by many different names, such as the Global Goals, the People Goals, and the Moonshot Goals, and also the lovable acronym, which we have to really enunciate or else it sounds like something else, the SDGs, standing for Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm going to use the acronym from now on. SDGs, they are essentially a blueprint for ensuring a sustainable world, and it's a global undertaking for the period of 15 years. So we adopted the SDGs back in 2015, and we have until 2030 to achieve the SDGs. And coming back to this notion of a global undertaking for ensuring a sustainable world, that's a really important part about the SDG framework. It speaks an international language. All 193 UN member states, including New Zealand, adopted the SDGs back in 2015. And this idea of this global undertaking makes it really, not only symbolically really beautiful, but also really helpful for businesses and organizations that are wanting to communicate what are their sustainable values and their sustainable strengths, and how they're wanting to make their sustainable impact in the world, and they can communicate it globally, because this is the largest framework globally for sustainability. So that's really important. The other key thing about the SDGs is it looks at sustainability in all its forms. Sort of as I mentioned before, and this is why I love this framework, because it connects so well. It connects with economic, social, and environmental. So all areas of sustainability. And the framework definitely has one of the key themes is that interconnection. Everything is interconnected. And it also means that this framework is relevant to every industry, and it's not polarizing, because you could care and you could work in the space of environmental sustainability, where it comes, just thinking about, like growing trees, right? Just like that, clear-cut environmental aspect, and how that has positive flow-on effects to a social lens, right? Obviously trees can link back to urban green space, and more urban green space means that we have, a thriving community that are healthy, which means we're healthy, which means less is being spent on the health industry. So that has an economic factor. So that's just a quick explanation about how interconnected the goals are, but that's also what makes them so special. And that's why they're so important. And we're seeing more and more businesses and organizations use the SDGs as a tool to help communicate what they value, how they are making their sustainable impact. And the other key thing about the SDGs is, although they are sort of an initiative that came from the United Nations, they are not owned by the UN. No one owns them. So you could say that everyone owns them. So everyone has a responsibility to action the SDGs, whether you're an individual, a school, a non-profit, a business, local, national government. We all have a responsibility. And because there's an element, like no one's overseeing the SDGs, right? It means there's also a bit of flexibility and autonomy around how we can get there. But you can get really nerdy with the SDGs. There are multiple targets behind each goal. Altogether, there are 169 targets and 232 indicators. But there's this element, as I said, of flexibility with the SDGs. There are some targets, some guidelines to help us get there. They are a beautiful visual framework that speak not only an international language, but an intergenerational one as well, because kids can connect with the goals just by looking at the colors and the images. And then, as I said, you can get really nerdy with them. And now we're seeing more SDG consultants and more, massive businesses using the SDGs as a tool to communicate what they value. So, yeah, it's a very important framework. And I encourage everyone to get to know it because, yeah, you're going to become an SDG nerd like myself and Becks. I guarantee it.
Yeah, definitely. And that was something that really, really struck me. Like, it was like being hit by a bus when I was confronted by the SDGs. And I knew about them, I'd heard about them, but I hadn't really taken the time to think and reflect on how they could apply to agriculture. And I think once I sat down and looked at them, and I was looking at different sustainability frameworks and doing a bit of research and learning, and they just make sense. It was like being smacked in the face and going, everything fits in here. And this creates space for innovation in every aspect of our world and sustainability. And for me, it's really back to that point you make about how important it is that they're a global language, because I think not only are they a global language, but as you say, they're intergenerational. And from the agricultural sector's point of view, they fit in at every point in the supply chain, from the farm gate, from the family farm, right through to the end consumer, through every layer that fits in that supply chain. They can all actually relate to and articulate with the Sustainable Development Goals. So for me, it was something that I thought was just a beautiful framework to be able to use in agriculture because of those points that you so clearly articulated there. So thank you, Bridget.
Yeah. And the other thing as well, it's beautiful, and it's the framework that has finally, I guess, after so many years, we've as a society, we've learned so much, and we've realized, wow, like these are the lessons we've learned, and they've fed those lessons into this framework. So a lot of people, while the SDGs were adopted by acclamation on the 25th of September 2015, they actually go all the way back to 1972. And so every time the United Nations and world leaders have come together to sort of, think about how can we, raise awareness about sustainable development and put it at the front of people's minds, it's almost as if finally in 2015, there was this sort of, from all the learnings that had happened from in the past. It's a really beautiful framework that has weaved in a lot of lessons learned. And as you said, it just takes, it's all that interconnectedness, and at any stage of your organization or business, or even as an individual living your life, you can find real connection with them.
Yeah, it's a great example of that reflection in action, isn't it? How we, reflect and change and make progress and then reflect again. So yeah, no, it's certainly something that I'm really enjoying working in the space with, and that this whole podcast series will actually be based around the SDGs, with each episode highlighting a different one of the goals and how that fits into agriculture. So, yeah. Personal question for you, Bridget, is the work you're doing actually contributes to development in all of the goals, but which one of the goals do you align with most personally, and why?
Yeah, I always say this at my workshops, that the most important goal to me is SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. So visually, it's this beautiful, dark blue color, but more importantly, the message behind partnerships for the goals is that important notion that we can't do this alone. If we want to action all of the SDGs, we must work in collaboration and we must work together. And I see partnerships for the goals as being my way through Beat and Proceed to partner, connect, and engage with people and organizations and businesses to connect with the relevant SDGs that they want to champion. And I see this, what we're doing right now, Becks, with your amazing podcast, as being an example of SDG 17. So SDG 17, it's not just partnerships, otherwise you could say any organization that has any clients is ticking SDG 17. It's so much more than that. It's actually about partnering with organizations and businesses and individuals who are championing the SDG framework, so it's, I really recommend take a look at the targets that sit behind each SDG. SDG 17, it is a complex one because it's not just about, working in partnership with different organizations and businesses, but it's also from a more, from a global lens. It's about keeping developed nations accountable to helping developing nations to achieve the SDGs. So it's definitely my favorite goal. I see it as the glue. It's the glue between each goal.
It's great, isn't it? It's just such a nice summary. You get through working through all the goals and you get to this goal at the end and you go, oh, it just ties everything together. And that's a really, really important part of the framework. So what a beautiful goal to align with there, Bridget. Changing tact a little bit here. So something I think about often, and I know that leaders in agriculture do too, is, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it, from an, I guess you term, I don't know whether you term yourself as an outsider, but loosely connected to agriculture, but more so now with Beat and Proceed, looking in. What do you see as the biggest challenge to New Zealand agricultural sector regarding sustainability?
Yeah, what I'm hearing from the clients and the organizations that I work with in the agri space when it comes to sustainability is those that understand the sector the most and know how to weave sustainability in, they should be given the autonomy to be doing that, right? Because they know how best the agri sector works. And I would say that the challenge is that we're seeing a lot of these, I guess, these structures being imposed on farmers, being imposed on businesses in the agri space, when actually, it's sometimes hard enough just to survive, right? Just to, work on the business day to day and do business as usual. But I see that with the opportunity with sustainability, and particularly, obviously, I'm very biased, but looking at the SDG framework, it has that element of flexibility and that element of creativity and, I guess, the opportunity to have that personal connection with sustainability. And as you so nicely articulated, Becks, to weave sustainability at all levels with those in the agri space that have a thorough understanding of knowing how to do that. So this is a framework that isn't owned by anyone. There's no regulator. So then there's so much opportunity for a business or an organization in the agri space to take that framework and run with it. Use this framework as a way to articulate what is your mission, what is your purpose, where do you want to make sustainable impact, and obviously there are going to be goals that are so directly connected to the agri space. For example, SDG 2, zero hunger. When you look at the targets, they're specifically about sustainable farming, sustainable agriculture, seed diversification, the nutrition behind our food. But don't stop there. Look at the other SDGs that might have a real strong connection to what you personally connect with, whether it's SDG 5, gender equality, or SDG 4, quality education. So I see there being real opportunity in the agri space to champion this framework because there's so much interconnection of how the SDGs link back to agriculture. And we got to remember that New Zealand, we have a massive international influence with agriculture. Worldwide, people understand how we stand, in our own league when it comes to agriculture, right? And we have such a great name for us, I believe, internationally. So then it makes sense to be using an international language to articulate how we are doing it sustainably. So that is where I see there being massive opportunity in the agri space with this connection to the SDG framework and coming back to it speaking that global language.
Thank you so much for that, Bridget. That was so insightful and definitely so aligned with my thinking as well and the work that I'm doing and hoping to do within the agricultural sector, and I know that you're doing as well. So, yeah, it's just so great to be so aligned on this topic. And actually, do you know what? I'm really, really jealous that I actually haven't had a chance to paint beads with you yet, and we have to make this happen somehow because I have got massive FOMO about not having my own set of beads. So I'm waiting for that day that I'm going to get to join in one of your workshops because it just looks so much fun and like such a great way to create that white space and have a bit of play introduced to our innovative thought around these really big challenges that we're facing as a global community. So one day I'm holding you to that.
Good, please do. And look, maybe we should make a call out to all the listeners. We could do a podcast listeners beat and proceed session or something. Definitely.
Yeah, we totally could. So one last question for you, Bridget, and that is, it's a really, really practical one. I would love you to throw out an idea of what is one practical take-home action that farming businesses can take to contribute to sustainability.
Taking stock of where you are on your current sustainability journey. And maybe an exercise that I recommend, you do would be take a look at the SDGs, check out the targets that sit behind each goal, and with a pen, just mark out what are the targets that you have direct impact in, what are the targets that you have indirect impact in, and where would you like to have impact in. And I think when we start there, we can see, okay, we are already making massive impact towards certain SDGs and celebrate that, recognize that, communicate that, because it's so typical in New Zealand and Aotearoa. We don't actually celebrate the success that we're doing. So it's important that we do that. But then the other thing is don't just stop there. We can't just, do SDG bingo and go, great, these are the goals that we're naturally achieving. I challenge you to go a step further and grow that impact, maximize it, whether that is, taking time to just think about what are some initiatives or partnerships or, how could you make some more change in the areas you want to make impact in. And I think the other big thing, which I really encourage businesses and organizations to do, is coming back to that key ethos of the goals, which is leaving no one behind. How can you involve all of your organization on this journey? Because remember, one of the other names for the SDGs is the people's goals. So we must all have responsibility to action them. And I think there's a really beautiful opportunity for businesses to involve everyone in this process. Healthy democracy, but also it means that people will have a personal connection and engagement to the goals they want to champion, and they'll see how what they do day to day has an impact in that space. So those are my tips, I reckon. Yeah, start there, look at the SDGs, look at the targets, and involve everyone, I reckon.
They are such great tips, Bridget. Thank you so much for that. And I think that's just really wonderful about bringing everyone along the journey, because that's what it really is all about. It's everyone needs to be involved and that we leave no one behind. So thank you so much. Bridget, you've been so generous with your time this morning. So thank you for connecting today. Thank you for having a chat. And I really look forward to catching up again in person soon.
Likewise, Becks, and amazing stuff with what you're doing with this podcast. I'm really excited to see it grow, and I'm excited to see the agri space dominate and be a champion towards the SDG framework, and you're helping that happen. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Whole Story podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it and are feeling inspired and optimistic about putting sustainability into practice on farm. I have one last request for you before you go. Make sure, whatever platform you're listening to us on, that you hit follow and share the show or episodes with your friends, so that together we can grow our community and inspire sustainability in agriculture in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And thanks again to FMG for partnering with The Whole Story, so that we could bring this podcast to life for you all to enjoy. Catch you next time.